Hello Steelers, and welcome to this short 6mm German infantry painting video. You see what I did there? I recently was given these 6mm German World War II infantry by 2D6 Wargaming, and I thought I'd make a painting video to show you the process I went through to complete them. 6mm is a scale that a lot of people who paint larger scales feel they can't tackle, but if you can paint lines and dots on a 28mm figure, then you can paint 6mm. The first thing I do is fix the individual infantry strips to coffee stirrers. These were liberated from a local coffee shop, and you can find them anywhere on the high street. You can buy your own, but why not recycle? I use PVA glue to hold them in place. It's not a strong bond, but it is perfect for the small figures, and it will hold them in place if you let the glue dry for a long time, preferably overnight. Next is undercoating the figures, and for this I use white and a large brush. You can use whatever colour you like for the undercoat, but using white will mean that the later paint will be slightly brighter, and that's what you want for such small figures. Then it's time to begin the basic uniform colour. For this, I'm using Vallejo's German Field Grey World War II. This would work for all the periods of the war, but you might want to add in a few camouflage smocks for the later war. That's entirely up to you. I was painting these for speed, so one colour was fine for me. By using a biggish brush, I just slap this on. You don't need to be delicate, as you'll be painting other colours on later on. Just ensure all the figures are covered fully and you'll be grand. Then it's time to get the smallest brush you own and begin with the flesh. Again, this is a Vallejo paint, sunny skin tone, but you can use whatever you like here. I do this stage early on, as it can mess up helmets and rifles if you do it later, and I'd prefer to do it quickly, to be honest. We will be painting in the other details later, so that will cover up the paint that I've made a mess with. Don't forget, you can always go back later and cut in small areas of paint to cover where you've made mistakes. We are doing this with some speed and going for an impression on the tabletop, not Golden Demon winners. The helmets are next, and for this I use German Grey. German Camouflage Dark Green would also stand in here, so use whichever you like. Helmets were painted in a variety of colours, and if any rivet counters wants to get snarky about the exact shade on a 6mm figure, then let them. Relax and enjoy your hobby. Next up are the rifles. For this I use beige brown, again by Vallejo. I really should work on getting a sponsorship. You can also paint any wooden items, such as spade handles and even the water bottles in this, but I didn't bother. You'll not see them at 3 feet away. Just go with what you'll see on the tabletop. Then the jackboots are painted in black, again from, you guessed it, Vallejo. This is a simple process of painting using a small brush. If you're doing later war Germans, you might want to just hit the feet rather than the boots going up the leg. Again though, we are trying to achieve an impression rather than any microscopic detail. Now if you want to, you could paint in the bread bags and the other pieces of equipment. However, I find the contrast between them and the uniforms is very slight, so I'm not sure it's worth doing. Instead, I went for a shading option to emphasise the shadows on the figures from the sculpting. This was achieved with a Great God Agrax Earth shade. You simply splash this all over your figures and make sure you draw off some of it with a brush if it pulls in the recesses. Then it's time to hit them with the varnish. I use Winsor & Newton's Professional Artist Matte Spray for this and give them all a good coating. As we use PVA glue in the first instance to glue them down, they easily peel off the sticks when the varnish is dry. Just make sure you clean off any excess glue remnants with your fingernail or a sharp knife. As the PVA is plasticky, this should be a doddle. Basing is equally easy, but happens in a couple of steps. First, I'm using a small size Flames of War base, which I bought from Warbases as the section sized element. Using a small pair of snippers, I cut the figures down into individuals, using about 10 for each section. Obviously, use as many or as few as you want for your sections. Then, I apply a good thick coat of Vallejo's texture paste. This is the dark grey version, but any would work. You can even paint it in your preferred colour when it's dry anyway. I then stick the figures into the paste, using the paste to hold them in place. You could add a small blob of super glue on the base of each figure to help the bond, but I didn't bother and I saw no detrimental effects. Then it's finally time to finish the bases when the paste has dried. Paint on undiluted PVA glue and sprinkle static grass over the top. I'm not sure what length this is, but it's pretty small, so maybe it's 2mm. But use whatever you want. I also don't use a static grass applicator, as I find blowing on the base immediately after adding the grass will make it stand up anyway. And that's it, a completed company for O Group, with a couple of extra medium machine gun stands for the supports. As you may notice, I didn't bother with all the details, but there is enough on them to pick out the stuff that is recognisable from 3 feet away, or normal gaming distance. As I mentioned, you could add in as many small details as you like, but the Agrax does a good job of highlighting the sculpt recesses and shadows. Painting 6mm figures doesn't need to be a chore, and if you can paint lines and dots on a 28mm figure, as I said, you can easily do the same on any 6mm figure. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, and you aren't already, please subscribe and also check out my Patreon and channel memberships if you want to help support the channel. You'll get ad-free access to videos early before they go public. See the links in the video description for more information.